to the Salt Lake City Planning Commission. Today's date is Wednesday, February 14th, 2024. Happy Valentine's Day to everyone. The Planning Commission consists of residents from each Salt Lake City district that are appointed in a manner providing balanced geographic, professional, neighborhood, and community interest representation. The Planning Commission reviews and acts on any changes to the city's general plans, small area plans, special studies, zoning ordinances, and zoning district maps. The Commission also reviews and acts on planned unit developments, conditional uses, and certain subdivisions. Our goal is to provide a welcoming and safe environment for everyone. We ask that those in attendance adhere to a few ground rules. 1, silence or turn off your cell phones. 2, respect the person speaking and do not interrupt or do other things that could intimidate or deter others from exercising their right to be heard. Clapping, cheering, jeering, shouting, or other actions used to discourage people who have different opinions from participating will not be tolerated. People who attempt to diminish someone else's input may be removed from the room. 3, if you wish to speak, come to the microphone once the public hearing has been opened and state your name. Members of the public will have 2 minutes to comment. Your time cannot be combined with someone else's time. Everyone will get the same amount of time to speak so that we can ensure everyone is treated equally. If you are a representative of an officially registered, recognized organization, and the item you wish to speak on is within the boundaries of your organization, you will be given 5 minutes. If it is outside of your boundaries, you will be given 2 minutes. 4, if you have a handout that you want the commission to see, you need to leave copies because they become part of the official record. 5, when commenting, speak clearly, keep your comments on topic and brief. 6, questions asked during a public hearing will not be answered during the public hearing. Rather, the commission may ask the applicant or staff to answer questions after the public hearing is closed, or have city staff follow up with you at a later time. We will move on to the report of the chair and vice chair. The chair has nothing to report.
Nothing to report, thank you.
We will move to the report of the director.
I don't have anything to report tonight. Thank you.
We will move to the open forum where we have 10 minutes to discuss any planning, zoning, and general land use items.
I have a question. Nick, we had an item that was in appeals, if I remember correctly. Do we have an update on that?
That appeal hearing is tomorrow, actually.
Perfect, thank you so much.
It appears that there's no other business for the open forum. We will move to the other business. We have a petition to consider initiating a zoning amendment to modify allowed encroachments and height encroachments. And Commissioner Berry would like to speak on that.
Oh, I'm just ready to make a motion on it.
Okay.
I think this came up last meeting, so I don't need to speak on it. So I'll go ahead and do that. I move that the commission initiate a zoning text amendment for chapter 21A.36.020, specifically table 21A.36.020.b and table 21A.36.020.c, and any necessary changes to title 21A that are related to either table.
I second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Berry and a second from Commissioner Santos Rivera. Any discussion to the motion? Let's go ahead and take a vote. Commissioner Gale.
Yes.
Commissioner Berry.
Yes.
Commissioner Kratzik.
Yes.
Commissioner Burrows.
Yes.
Commissioner Tuttle.
Yes.
Commissioner Santos Rivera.
Yes.
And the chair will also vote yes. That passes unanimously. We will go ahead and move to the consent agenda. To verify, it appears that items 2 and 4 will need a public hearing, correct?
Yes.
Okay. The items on the consent agenda are approval of the meeting minutes from January 10th, 2024, plan development at approximately 1532 South, 900 West, case number PLN PCM 2023-00660, Chromeworks time extension at approximately 269 West Brooklyn Avenue, case numbers PLN PCM 2020-00610 and PLN PCM 2020-00843, and planned development for Riverside Cottages at approximately 552 North, 1500 West, case number PLN PCM 2023-00251. And I will go ahead and open the public hearing on the planned development at approximately 1532 South, 900 West, and the planned development for Riverside Cottages at approximately 1552 North, 1500 West. If there's anyone from the public that would like to speak on those items, go ahead and approach the microphone. It appears that no one wishes to speak. Have we received any emails on those items? Oh. Okay, go ahead and approach the microphone and state your name. Oh, the microphone at the, yeah. And state your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Shauna Peck. I live at 1530 West 500 North. This is going to be abutting my property. For 13 years now, we've been debating with these folks on what needs to be done. No changes to any of their plans. The cities went along saying, no, we can't do it because emergency vehicles can't get in there. I can't see where we've changed anything to say that they can. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on the consent agenda items? Any emails received?
We did receive one email on the Chromeworks time extension. That email is in your Dropbox.
Thank you. We will go ahead and close the public hearing on the consent agenda and bring it back to the commission for any discussion or a motion on the consent agenda.
I'm just looking at the staff report, checking for the what it says about the last comment. So
Okay.
I'm going to take a minute longer and kind of look at that.
Mr. Chair, if it's helpful, I can summarize. I believe this is 1532 South, 900 West, right? The fire department did review these plans and did provide comments that the development needs to provide the appropriate fire apparatus access roads, and gave some detail on what that means. And so with that, any development proposal has to comply with the fire code. The planning commission doesn't have the ability to make modifications to that. And so even if you are approving a plan development,
Nick, could you speak up?
yeah, even if you are approving a plan development and somebody can't meet those fire code requirements for access roads, they couldn't move forward until they do.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the consent agenda. Those 3 items in the.
I'll second.
We have a motion to accept the consent agenda, or I believe you need to say approve the consent agenda.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. We have a motion from Commissioner Burrows
Second.
and a second from Commissioner Kratzik. Any discussion to the motion? We'll go ahead and take a vote. Commissioner Kratzik,
Yes.
Commissioner Burrows,
Yes.
Commissioner Barry,
I abstain from the minutes part because I wasn't here, and yes for the rest.
Commissioner Tuttle,
Yes.
Commissioner Gale,
Yes.
Commissioner Santos Rivera.
Yes.
And the chair will also vote yes. That gives us unanimous passing of the items and 6 yeas and 1 abstention on the minutes from January 10th. We will go ahead and move to the regular agenda. Our first item is parking text amendment, case number PLN PCM 2023-00646, and our planner is Cassie Younger.
Hello. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Cassie Younger, and I'm presenting a text amendment that would prohibit parking uses when it includes the demolition of a dwelling.
Can you speak more into your microphone?
Yeah, sorry. All right. First, some background on why this is being proposed. Is that better? Okay. All right, we currently have a housing loss mitigation ordinance that requires a mitigation plan for a variety of circumstances where the loss of housing or housing law uses may occur. So these current mitigation options include providing replacement housing or a fee into the city's housing trust. Our recently adopted Thriving in Place anti-displacement document calls this ordinance ineffective. Often when housing is demolished and replaced with new housing, the new development is more expensive than the old housing, so tenants are forced to move. This is called direct displacement. Thriving in Place focuses on a need to preserve what is referred to as naturally occurring affordable housing, because these are typically older homes with lower rents that are at risk of being demolished and replaced with more expensive housing. So Thriving in Place aims to create new ordinances that would prevent this type of displacement and assist the tenants in the process. So for the proposed text amendment, this one focuses specifically on the issue of demolition of housing, specifically when it is being replaced with a parking use. This amendment would prohibit any standalone parking uses when it includes the demolition of a dwelling unit. So this would include commercial parking lots, park and ride lots, parking structures, and off-site parking. The second part of this amendment adds language to the parking chapter that would prohibit the expansion or addition of new and existing parking lots and structures when the demolition of a dwelling unit is involved. This would include developments where there is replacement housing included in the project or not. So in summary, one of the goals of Thriving in Place is to preserve the existing affordable housing that we have in order to prevent this type of direct displacement. The replacement of housing with auto-centric uses does not serve the city in its goal to be people-focused or assist in our anti-displacement strategy. Therefore, this amendment better aligns with Thriving in Place, and staff is recommending a positive recommendation to the City Council on this petition.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the commission?
So you mentioned that, turn the mic on. So you mentioned that if a new development happens, and parking is included in that and it displaces a unit, sorry, let me just ask the question straight. If a new development happens that has parking included in the building, and it displaces a unit, would this amendment make it harder for that development to happen because parking is included in that new development?
Yes.
Okay.
If a parking use is included,
If there's,
like a parking
if there's
lot.
one, so if there's one unit and that they want to demolish that and build 4 units, including 4 parking spaces, that wouldn't be allowed?
If a parking lot or structure is included, no, it would not. Even if the net is a gain, really the goal is to prevent this demolition of this type of affordable housing.
Would you say, like, does a fourplex with 4 parking spaces count as a parking lot or a parking
That's
garage?
just like providing the parking required. Or thinking of like parking uses like a structure or a commercial lot.
So if they were going to build a multifamily that has 3 floors of parking and then 7 floors of housing, but it displaces 1 unit, that wouldn't be allowed?
Yeah, so
Well, that doesn't sound right, does it?
the,
I wonder if that's true. I wonder if that's.
yeah, so the parking structure or the expansion of a parking lot would not be allowed.
Oh, wait, stop. Sorry, we were just talking about, what was the question?
So if a parking structure was built with multifamily residential, but that has a net gain.
Yeah, if that happened, they would have to go, according to the way this is written right now, they would have to go through a plan development process to do that.
That doesn't mean if there's 1 unit on a lot and they wanted to build 4 units or whatever, 400 units with 3 levels of parking, that would not be allowed without a planning development process.
That's the way that it's written now. But we're talking about that right now, and we may need to take a little step back on this.
The intent of this proposal is to prevent the creation of new standalone parking as a use from displacing housing, or for expansions of existing parking lots that would replace housing. It's not intended to prevent or eliminate somebody who wants to develop even something that's allowed in the underlying zone that may result in the demolition of a house, but also includes parking.
Right.
Because our code requires it in most cases. That's not the intent of this proposal. It's to limit the expansion or creation of a parking as a principal use from displacing housing.
So as written, it is not saying that, but the intention is to prevent standalone parking structures, but as written, it is not doing that, right?
Yeah, sorry, repeat that question? Sorry, we're
We
sitting
might
here-
need some clarifying language in the amendment that specifies what Nick just said, that it should be a parking use, not just required parking for whatever is being replaced.
Yeah, we can clarify that language. Yep.
Is that correct?
Yeah,
I don't
so
want to
like
put words
if,
in your mouth.
so I'd be willing to pass it if the staff is able to handle like that it is specific to parking structures, not including
Not required parking for use.
yeah. I
We
feel like
still
you a
have
better
to
way-
do the public hearing. We still have to do the public hearing, so we're not at that
Yeah.
point yet.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
We still have to do the public hearing, so we're not quite at that point yet.
Yeah, let's go ahead and open up the public hearing. We've received one card to speak from Cindy Cromer. Go ahead and approach the microphone, state your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
I misjudged this. I should have parked myself closer, pardon the pun, to the microphone. So I think the issue here is that we cannot afford to lose a single unit of existing affordable housing for any reason. So if you can simply, in perhaps another initiative, make it clear that if you're taking out a unit of existing affordable housing, you're going to have to replace it in the new project somehow, some way. And that's the burden on the developer. What I think this project, this proposal addresses is the freestanding parking lot. And I wanted to give you a bit of history from the late 80s, early 90s. I can't pin it down any more closely than that. But something like over 50, the number that sticks in my mind is 53. Movers and Shakers, the only one I knew was the director of UTA, joined together and petitioned the city back when citizens could initiate a land use petition. This is prior to 95. And told the city they didn't want any more freestanding parking lots on Main Street. So this is not a new issue. This is one that has deep history and one that citizens joined together, over 50 of them, to tell the city, don't do this anymore. So that's a bit of history. I didn't hear that in the staff's presentation. Thought you should know.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on this item? We'll go ahead. Well, have we received any emails on this?
No, we haven't received any.
Thanks. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring this back to the commission.
So I'm wondering if staff feels like we should either, I feel like we should table this because it's a recommendation versus, because we can't really condition it to then have you direct you on what to look at with it. But I'd like to get, if that's, amenable to table it and bring it back next meeting, that it's really, the language is meeting your intent better, because I think we're all on board for your intent, just not how it's playing out. If it
Commissioner Berry,
wasn't,
if you want to put that in the form of a motion, I'll second.
so, yeah, so first I wanted to just do kind of the question of staff feels like tabling it as, you're okay with that? I would rather do that than make a recommendation with this provision, because we're recommending it, that it be cleaner before it goes, so. And I will move to table this item for a future meeting so that we can then review a cleaner text version that matches the intent stated by staff.
I'll second that.
We have a motion to table from Commissioner Berry and a second from Commissioner Tuttle. Any discussion to the motion? We'll take a vote. Commissioner Tuttle,
Yes.
Commissioner Burrows,
Yes.
Commissioner Kratzik,
Yes.
Commissioner Berry,
Yes.
Commissioner Gale,
No.
Commissioner Santos Rivera.
Yes.
And the chair also votes yes. That motion to table passes 6-1. We'll go ahead and move to the next item on the agenda, zoning map amendment at approximately 1050 West, 1300 South. Case number PLN PCM 2023-00609. And our planner is Riley Hall.
Thank you.
This request is to rezone city-owned property at 1050 West, 1300 South. I do want to mention that we have received 2 public comments via email after the publication of the staff report, and both of those are in the Dropbox folder for your review. This property is currently zoned R1 5000 single-family residential, and the proposed zone is RMF 30 low-density multifamily residential. The purpose of the request is to accommodate future residential development, and the proposed RMF 30 zone would allow an increase in density and different housing types to be allowed here. Those different housing types include duplexes, townhomes, multifamily, and cottage-style development. There is currently no concept plan for development of the property. If the rezone is adopted, then the city council would then issue a request for proposal for development of the property, and staff is recommending approval. Rezone decisions are a legislative matter that is decided on by the city council, and they are not controlled by any specific standards, but City Code Section 21A50 lists some items that should be considered. And those are whether the proposal would further the city goals and policies, whether it furthers the purpose of the zoning ordinance, the effect that the rezone and subsequent development would have on adjacent properties, if it is contrary to any existing overlay districts, and the ability of the existing public facilities and services to support development of the property. The property is located in the Glendale neighborhood, which is one of 2 major neighborhoods in the West Side community, and this area is subject to the land use goals of the West Side Master Plan, which specifically identifies vacant parcels as opportune places for high-density residential infill development. The Glendale neighborhood as a whole is mostly composed of low-density residential. There are some pockets of open space and higher intensity uses approaching the commercial nodes that are identified in the West Side Master Plan. The lot and its surrounding area are both zoned R1 5000 single-family residential. The lot is a large vacant parcel that has frontage and access from 1300 South, and it's located across the street from the Jordan River and Jordan River Trail. There's a nearby community node at the intersection of California Avenue and 900 West, which is southeast of the property. This node has several neighborhood amenities, including the Sorensen Multicultural Center, the Utah Community Action, and the Unity Fitness Center, and those are all within walking distance of the property. Along with vehicular access from 1300 South, both California Avenue and 900 West have striped bike lanes and several bus stops, so future residents would have options when it comes to transportation. The R1 5000 zone is limited to primarily single-family homes and supporting uses, and the minimum lot size in this zone is 5,000 square feet. The RMF 30 zone allows increased density and more options for housing types, including duplexes, townhomes, multifamily, and cottage-style developments. The minimum lot size is 2,000 square feet per dwelling unit for all housing types except for cottage developments, which requires 1,500 square feet per dwelling unit. This zone also has design standards, which the R1 5000 zone does not have. And these zones also have a couple things in common. Both of them are low-density residential zones, and both of them have similar maximum building height standards. In the R1 5000 zone, that is 28 feet, and in the RMF 30 zone, that is 30 feet. They also have similar standards when it comes to lot coverage. In the R1 5000 zone, the maximum lot coverage is 40%, and in the RMF 30 zone, it is 50%. And they also have similar requirements when it comes to setbacks and parking. Future development of the property can occur under the current or the proposed zone. Because of its proximity to the Jordan River, a portion of this property is within the riparian corridor overlay, which is intended to protect this river from negative impacts that could be caused by future development. The image on the right shows an approximation of where the RCO falls on the property. Future development is limited within this area, and there's a required no disturbance area that extends about 100 feet into the property from the front property line. This would reduce the overall residential unit count that could be accommodated on the property. That would be calculated just by the overall acreage. And in addition to that, future development of the property will also be influenced by access roads and driveways to the new units. Parking areas of attached garages aren't provided, and any required setbacks, landscape buffers, and lot coverage. And those factors may also reduce the total unit count that is based only on the acreage. As discussed previously, aside from the lower minimum lot size, many of the development standards are similar for the existing and proposed zones in regards to building height, setbacks, and lot coverage. And each new unit will be required to comply with design standards. And those include requirements for building materials, ground floor glass, and blank walls that face a street. In addition to that, each unit is required to provide an entry feature, like a covered porch or an emphasized doorway. All required parking must be provided on site, either in a common parking area, a driveway, or an attached garage. And each unit must have 2 spaces, except for cottage and multifamily units, which have lesser requirements. Under the proposed zone, there is a required landscape buffer for multifamily and row homes that are adjacent to lots in a single family zoning district. And so with those housing types, that would be required along the east, west, and northern boundaries of the lot. The existing utility systems that serve the property aren't adequate to support any development in their existing state, and the portion of 1300 South that is near the property is narrow and does not have sidewalks, curb, or gutter. So both of those facilities will need to be upgraded before any development can move forward. Staff has reviewed the proposal and recommends approval because it aligns with the adopted city goals and policies of the West Side Master Plan, Housing SLC, and Plan Salt Lake, and it's intended to provide housing, which is one of the most pressing needs in Salt Lake City.
Thank you. Any questions?
I just have one quick question. Riley, what would be the agency that would be issuing the RFP for this property?
That is undecided at this point, or it would be the city council who issues the RFP, and then after that, it would be a private development company.
Right. So the city council would initiate the RFP for this.
That's
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thanks.
Actually, just a correction, that's an administrative function. So once approved, if the zoning amendment is approved, it would be the administration side that would put together that RFP and handle that process. More than likely, that would be the Department of Community and Neighborhoods.
Community and neighborhoods. Okay. Thanks.
We'll go ahead and open the public hearing on this item. We have one card from David Trister. Well, since you're already at the microphone, you can go ahead and state your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Scott Goslin, 1207. I live on the northeast corner of this lot. What Riley has pointed out, there's several problems with this lot that I see. One, your riparian area will totally disturb with the native wildlife and the geese and so forth that are there, ducks. You'll lose more than 2/3 or 1/3 of your lot. You're going to have to raise the lot size for drainage. All of the area, and that area is almost a one-way, not a continue throughway. 13 of the residents in that area lack the infrastructure, the sidewalks, and the setback that you require. That'll be required for all of them in order to bring you all up to code. We have a pumping station since the area is already lower grade than the area for septic and for water system. I don't mind seeing a difference in the 15. I disagree with the 30. For the proposed height, you'll change for 2 feet. For the larger structure, you're not going to be able to accommodate that more than 4 or 5 structures, maybe 10 at the most if you have a cul-de-sac. You'll see other problems and so forth. I wish the other residents would speak up to this. I am one of the few individuals, but I hear from all the rest of my neighbors that they don't care for this. I think it would greatly affect where the quality of life is. I would think the city would look at further south than that, next to the soccer fields and everything else on the Riverdale Road. There's already an existing cul-de-sac. There's already existing city property, and it sits within the riparian area, but wide enough that you would accommodate more housing structures with less changes to the overall cost. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's have David Trister go ahead and state your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
David Troster. Is that working? Happy Valentine's Day. I'm opposed to rezoning 1.4 acres at 1050 West, 1300 South from single family to multifamily. The city purchased this property in 2010 for $129,000 to build single family homes, but never did. They even drew up a cul-de-sac plan, which I've seen. Residents on this street banded together in 2020 and petitioned the city to turn this property into a park. An application was filed with the Capital Improvement Program. That application was approved in 2021 by the CDCIP Citizen Advisory Board, by Mayor Aaron Mendenhall, and by the City Council, which allocated $150,736 to initiate turning this parcel into a park. The Parks Department told me and my neighbors that it would be turned into a park. 25 households signed on to the CIP application. That's everyone on the road. The Glendale Community Council also endorsed the project to turn it into a park. I have the paperwork to be entered into the record. I'll give that to you. The will of the people is to create a park on this site. I'm not sure why the mayor is trying to subvert the will of the people, especially when only 2.5 years ago, she approved the CIP application to locate a park on the site, as did the City Council. This parcel's open land on the Jordan River. The best use is to keep it as open land and incorporate it into the parkway. It's surrounded by single-family homes, and rezoning would be out of character and contrary to the will of the people for this public property. The only one who would benefit from a rezone would be a private developer. For these reasons, I oppose this rezone, as do my neighbors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak on this item? Go ahead and approach the microphone, and you'll have 2 minutes.
My name is Rick Nelson. I live on 1300 South, just at 1010 West. And I oppose this proposal. I don't really have anything more to add. Our other two gentlemen have stated things better than I could, but for the very same reasons that they've stated, I disagree with this proposal also. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on this item? Have we received any emails in the meantime?
I don't believe so.
We'll go ahead and close the public hearing on this and bring it back to the commission.
Describe for me again the impact of the riparian thruway on this property.
Yeah, let me come back to my previous slide that showed it. So there is a no disturbance area that's required by the riparian corridor, and that extends about 100 feet into the property. About 3/4 of this area can still be used to calculate the overall density for the property, but 1/4 can't. But no development can occur within that area.
How many units could be built without the riparian corridor overlay versus with it?
That's a great question that I don't know the answer to right off the top of my head. Currently, up to 36 cottage units can be built and 27 of any other housing type unit with the riparian corridor, and I believe it was just a few more than that without it.
Would it be possible to maintain the riparian corridor portion of this property for public use? Maybe put a small pocket park on the riparian part? like under the, yeah. I think the answer is yes, but let me just have you answer.
Yeah, that hasn't been considered as part of this application. That's not to say that it wouldn't be possible if there was some other movement towards it by the city council or the mayor's office.
My question has to do with the park. If it was approved, can you just elaborate on that? What ended up happening with that specific proposal? Because I heard one of the public members just mentioning that there was a park in place, that it was approved, and I just wonder what happened with that.
So the CIP application was received in 2021. After that, it was approved and funded, but the city did continue to analyze the property for its suitability for a park, and at that point, it was deemed ineligible, and the applicant was notified.
When was that again?
So I'm not as familiar with what the review process looked like with other city departments that were reviewing the CIP application. When we received the rezone application in August 2023, that's when we became aware of the existence of that CIP, and then we worked with other city departments to make sure everything was resolved, and the applicant was aware that a park would not be moving forward at the site.
Perfect. Thank you, Riley.
The things that I hear from the public comments or read about, I just want to clarify that this is currently zoned for residential. It has been forever.
That's correct.
Has been zoned for residential forever, and it's still, this request is to continue to zone it for residential, low density residential. So it's a matter of like what kinds of, if the houses can be attached or how much of a yard that they need, like what they can be built out of. That's kind of the difference between those two zones, is my understanding from reading your report. So it's not, the question for us right now is not, do we want a park or do we want residences here? Because it's already zoned residential. That's kind of what it's destined to be right now. And the request is to kind of change some of those requirements. Would rezoning it change any effect of the riparian corridor overlay? It doesn't change it at all.
That applies to whether development occurs under the R1 5000 zone or the proposed zone.
And the reason why there are already buildings in that area is because they were built before this riparian corridor was set aside.
Yeah, that's correct.
But you can't now you can't build a house in that area. So it would still be, it would be something, landscaping, a driveway, something like that. Okay.
Let me just say that I'm sympathetic to my fellow Glendale neighbors. I live 4 minutes from here, so I am sympathetic to that.
When I went there, I thought it was a nice neighborhood. It looks like the way that this lot is kind of tucked in, it mostly would face, these homes would mostly face, not face, but the back of these homes would be against the back of most of the homes that it would interact with. And because I think the question is not, would you like to see a park here or would you like to see homes here? That's not the question for us. It's like, does it meet the standards that rezoning asks us to look at? Of course, the city council can make a decision for whatever reason they want to, and you always can make a comment to the city council. But I think that I'm convinced by the report that it does meet the standards that we look at, and I would make a motion to approve this, or not to approve it, but to recommend it for approval to the city council. Unless someone says stop, unless someone stops me. Based on the information presented in discussion, I move that the commission order forward a recommendation to adopt the zoning map amendment to the city council.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Burrows and a second from Commissioner Gale. Any discussion to the motion? We'll go ahead and take a vote. Commissioner Gale.
Yes.
Commissioner Berry.
Yeah, so we are merely making a recommendation to the city council. They're the final decision makers, and so your journey for participating is not over. However, if they do approve it, I would strongly recommend those neighbors who are interested in this to get involved, because typically when the agency issues the request for proposal, which is the RFP, they can do that with community members' input. And you can kind of work with them to make the RFP something that includes a lot of your visions. So there's multiple, I don't know what will happen, but I wanted to bring that to your attention. Yeah, and given that this does meet the standards, I'll vote yes.
Commissioner Kratzik,
Yes.
Commissioner Burrows.
I want to say also, if you haven't seen the staff report, I believe staff reports are public records, right? So if you should definitely, if you haven't seen it yet, you should definitely look at it and see it, and make your best arguments for the next step in this. And maybe there's information in there that might change your mind, or there's something you might see that you could change someone else's mind too. So I appreciate your participation today, and I will vote yes.
Commissioner Tuttle.
Yes.
Commissioner Santos Rivera.
No.
And the chair will vote yes. That recommendation passes positively to the city council with 6 yeas and 1 nay. We will move to the next item, which is excuse me, zoning text amendment for protecting signs in all commercial and mixed use districts. Case number PLN PCM 2023-00996. And our planner is Grant Amon.
Thank you so much. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Grant Amon. I will be representing the Projecting Signs zoning text amendments. All right, this item is a city-initiated petition to amend the zoning ordinance to allow projecting business signs as a permitted sign type in all commercial and mixed-use districts. I will list the proposed changes and affected sections to the zoning ordinance in the coming slides. And staff is recommending that the commission forward a positive recommendation to the city council. The amendment would add the sign type projecting business storefront sign to the table of permitted signs in all remaining commercial and mixed-use districts. It also lowers the minimum clearance requirement from 10 feet to 8 feet, which is more in line with similar sign requirements nationwide. A few grammatical changes are also proposed, such as ensuring alphabetical order across each table. These signs are sometimes referred to as blade signs, and here's an illustration depicting an example of the sign that would be permitted, along with the height and width requirements. This amendment would exclusively alter section 21A.46, which is Salt Lake City's sign regulation chapter. Several sections within would be amended, which this is primarily due to many zoning districts having their own table of permitted signs. These modifications are in line with guiding city documents seeking to foster a beautiful city that is consistent with regulation, consistent in regulation and in appearance. And then based on analysis in the staff report, including compliance analysis, staff recommends that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council. With that, this concludes my presentation, and I am happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you. Any questions? We'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. We have one card from Cindy Cromer. Go ahead and approach the microphone, state your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Well, it's a sign of my advancing age, again, another pun, that I have some history on this. Back in the day, the planning director, a guy named Vern Jorgensen, scrubbed Main Street of these kinds of signs. It was in the name of beautification. So we have a sterile Main Street today because all of these signs were wiped out, including the one that went over the street for the Capitol Theater. The Capitol Theater sign is now relegated to Trolley Square, where it was mistaken as a historic element of a grid-like structure. It actually was from downtown. So this just shows you that whatever we thought was right at one point, I actually thought it was a bad idea to scrub Main Street years ago, but I am the queen of clutter. So we're going back to where we were, thank goodness. We had some really interesting signs, and the positive step that's happened in between is that we have now an ordinance that protects historic signs. Thanks.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on this item? Have we received any emails?
We have not.
We will go ahead and close the public hearing on this item and bring it back to the commission for discussion and a motion.
So I guess I have advancing age too, Cindy, because I remember working really hard on this in Sugar House to get these back. And I'm glad that it's going to be citywide because these make a really big difference in walkable communities, especially when we have very small setbacks. I don't know that I like this advancing age argument that Cindy made, though, because now I feel like I'm getting older. I can't even remember when we did this, but it was over 10 years ago. So I think this is a really good move for the citywide, and I think that it does provide a lot of variety for the businesses in ways that they can sign their business that make them easier to see for pedestrians than simply being flat on the actual building. So I'm really in favor of this, and I'm glad that we're finally looking at doing it citywide versus just in the business district of Sugar House.
Thank you.
If no one else has any comments, I'll make a motion. Based on the information presented and discussed, I'll move that the commission recommend to the city council approval of this zoning text amendment proposal.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Barry and a second from Commissioner Kratzik. Any discussion to the motion? We'll go ahead and take a vote. Commissioner Burrows.
Yes.
Commissioner Kratzik.
Yes.
Commissioner Gale.
Yes.
Commissioner Barry.
Yes.
Commissioner Tuttle.
Yes.
Commissioner Santos Rivera.
Yes.
And the chair will also vote yes. That motion passes unanimously and goes to the city council.
Thank you so much, commissioners.
We will move to the next item, TAG SLC text amendment, case number PLN PCM 2023-00894, and our planners are Cassie and Aaron.
Okay, good evening again. We are here to present the TAG SLC's proposed text amendments. Their request is to add single-family attached to all commercial zones where multifamily is already permitted. This would include adding it as a permitted use in the general commercial, community business, commercial corridor, community shopping, and the Sugar House Business District. Here's a map that shows all of these commercial districts that the applicant is requesting to add single-family attached as a permitted use. You can see they're very spread out throughout the city. This large area in the center is general commercial. Along Redwood and Main, we have commercial corridor. Sugar House Business District is in the corner, and community business and community shopping are spread throughout neighborhood nodes throughout the city.
So before we get into any details on this proposal, we thought it'd be important to kind of differentiate between these types of uses of multifamily and single-family attached. So with multifamily uses, they're typically in an apartment form, and the open space and parking are shared, and the land is centrally owned and centrally managed, whether it's through a condominium or an apartment. with single-family attached, they're usually in a townhouse shape. They have separate yards and parking, and land is individually owned on those properties. Now, in recent years, we have seen more development of townhouse-style condos or development that are multifamily, that really are classified as multifamily, but would be sold as condominiums. And those still have that central ownership of land, but the actual units are individually owned. And I did my best to illustrate what that would look like visually. Here, you don't own the land underneath. Now, single family attached, those are on individual lots, and you're owning the land below and the sky above, unless someone holds an easement or some sort of right beyond that. So you own the property and the land underneath.
So in this case, staff's recommendation differs from the applicant. We recommend adding single-family attached to the general commercial corridor and community shopping districts, but not in the community business or sugar house business district. And then we also recommend adding design standards to the zone wherever it is added as a permitted use. Our concern with the community business zone is that these are neighborhood level commercial hubs that are adjacent to residential areas. 9th and 9th commercial strip is zone CB, as well as the Marmalades commercial strip on 300 West, and many pockets of commercial activity throughout Rose Park, as well as many others. These are smaller, more affordable commercial spaces that not only contribute to the character of the neighborhood, but the mixed uses they offer help the neighborhood remain walkable, bikeable, and less dependent on vehicles. There have been a few instances in the past few years where commercial spaces in these zones have gone out of business and been replaced with multifamily developments, much to the dismay of the residents. Staff believes that adding more residential uses may encourage residential redevelopment in these areas that we want to remain a neighborhood commercial setting. As for the Sugar House Business District, this zone covers the core of Sugar House, which is a regional node and acts as our second downtown. It has a lively commercial activity and large high-density residential developments. The purpose of this district is to support a 24/7 population and incentivize high-density residential. Since single-family attached is inherently less dense than multifamily development due to the ownership of land and individual lots, staff believes that multifamily remains the best housing typology for this area. As for general commercial and commercial corridor, these zones both cover large areas of land in the city and permit a wide variety of uses that can support a variety of housing developments. Many residential developments have been approved in these zones as condos with a planned development in recent years. In the community shopping zone, while it is also smaller and similar to a neighborhood commercial node, these are less ripe for redevelopment as they contain large anchor stores. Examples of the community shopping zone include Trolley Square, Brickyard, and many Smiths throughout the city. So this zone also has a stricter review process, and any new development would go through a planned development process, which would ensure a better product. So staff supports adding single-family attached in all three of these districts.
With that recommendation, staff is recommending the inclusion of 2 design standards that would encourage and improve the pedestrian experience and provide requirements for good designs. First, staff is recommending that all ground floor units that are adjacent to a street would have a primary entry facing a street. That is already an existing design standard, but does not apply to these districts. These would apply only to single-family attached developments. For those required entry features, they would need to have a porch, and according to a permitted design within the code, and they would have to have a walkway connecting to that public sidewalk, and exterior lighting highlighting the entries and improving the pedestrian experience along the frontage of those properties. There we go. Did I skip a slide? Well, so we are recommending approval with the recommended modifications from staff. And the applicant's here and have a presentation that they would like to bring.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and have the applicant come forward and give their presentation. And state your name for the record.
Oh boy, get me out of the driver's seat. Jordan Atkin with TAG SLC, the applicant. Hello to commissioners that I have not met yet. So this has been a little bit of an interesting thing because we didn't really think this would be something that a private application would do. But we, as residential developers in the city, have continued to see this struggle, so we took it upon ourselves to take it on, and staff has been great to work with. I think it's important to note that these multifamily structures are already allowed. We're just pushing to allow a different type of platting to be done, which in our view is purely to promote for sale housing. This is an example, this is actually in a CB zone of a plat, and you can see how they're different. They're labeled as units instead of lots, but essentially the same thing can be done. They can also look virtually identical as well. Again, it's just if you own the land underneath your building. A big hurdle that we have on this specific project is condo laws require you to have contracts on 50% of your units before you can actually transact on the first one. So we've done other ones that are 10 or 12 units, and that's fairly manageable. When you get into the larger developments where you have to sell, say, 50 units before you can sell your first one, it becomes very logistically difficult. I think I'm going to then turn and kind of address some of the staff recommendations. We were given the opportunity to incorporate their recommendations into our proposal a couple months ago. We provided comments back that we didn't want to modify. With the entry features and the design standards, we're totally, and I think most developers are fine with those. I think it does promote a better product. It just felt like it was outside the scope of what we were asking for. And it also felt like it was going to be placing a higher burden of design for units that were intended to be for sale versus for rent, which we thought was like a 180-degree difference from what we should be doing. But that one, generally, we don't have that big of an issue with. We would like to ask the commission to consider the recommendation of limiting these districts. It sounded in correspondence with staff about the CB zone that the city was potentially looking to make some larger moves in the CB zone to try to promote those commercial districts to be maintained in there. And we think that's totally fine. What we're having a trouble with is currently you can build multifamily, and it just doesn't seem conducive to limit making for sale harder in those zones. So we would say, well, instead of addressing it through our application, maybe if there's a bigger CB rewrite coming, that we can then just take all multifamily or out, or make it be mixed use when they handle that. But some of those type of city initiatives are very long, long tailwinds, and sometimes take years. And there's active projects of which we have a couple in these zones that would be prevented or made considerably more difficult to go for sale if that is done. And then sugar house districts, we're huge. We love density. We're not saying that we should be developing single family attached in these areas. We're just saying, why not allow more tools in the tool belt so that we can have different development outcomes? On the right, I think, is the more applicable one. This was the Sugarmont project in the the Sugar House community business, and you can see that they kind of lined the street with townhomes. I don't know. I'm sure that because of the scope of the project, they weren't going to sell those anyway. But our proposal might allow a developer to look at having townhomes facing the street that could actually be sold off to individual owners, even though it's in a very, very dense district. And then Urban Alfondre put forward the West Village, which is the left slide. It is in a CG zone, but it shows a similar type of rendering of how we envision you could incorporate single family attached into a much denser district. And that's all we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission?
I do have a question. When you said that you can't transact on the first unit until 50% of the units are sold, is that a financing requirement or is it?
Yeah.
Your financiers won't?
Yeah.
Okay. And you can currently build, if you can build multifamily, you can make it available for sale.
Yes, it just
Right now.
requires you to do a condo plat.
Yeah.
So most of the time when you think of condos, you think of like stacked up more like an apartment.
Yeah.
But like Aaron's slide showed, they can look exactly the same. It's just this really small nuance of how the plat is done. And it makes it tremendously more difficult to finance them, to attract capital to the project, and then to ultimately sell them. It's harder for the end users as well.
You're saying it's harder for someone to buy a condo unit than a single family attached.
Absolutely.
Is that, you have consensus on that? You agree? Yeah. Okay.
I was going to add, there's a discussion in it on the fourth standard in the staff report.
I guess my question is, so like I really like the idea of having people be able to own the ground underneath their home. My one question is, with multifamily, a developer may be incentivized to produce a larger quantity of units where you can have units stacked on top of each other. Where this, you are denser than single family for sure, which is great. But do you have any knowledge about like the proportion of density that we're removing under the current kind of like setup, if things continue to run as they are?
I think Jordan might have more insight onto this, but that kind of depends on the zoning district and how tall that maximum height is and how many floors are allowed. You know, the nature of those units is entirely different from what you might see in a apartment style condominium, where, you know, it might be on a single floor, or you could have two floors in there, but you're missing the garage or that yard character as well that you see in a single family attached. But I can't really say, we don't have a number for that, what that looks like. But the design of a single family attached style development is inherently less dense because of, you know, circulation in yards and that cap, because they're not stacked.
Yeah.
So just as like an example, like we don't have density requirements in the commercial zones. It's just dictated by like the height and bulk requirements. So in some of these commercial zones, you can go, you know, 100 feet tall, but townhomes aren't 100 feet tall. So that's really the gap of the density would really show itself.
Yeah, I guess like we, as it currently stands, as I understand it, like a developer may be incentivized to stack for financing reasons. That's not like a zoning or like a thing we are doing on our end. If we allow this, are we incentivizing developers to miss out on like a proportion of the financing of doing the potential of a bigger development? And I think the answer is yes. Okay, that's all I
really think it depends on the zone. I don't know all of them verbatim, but like CN and CB, you're limited to basically 30 feet, which is, in our view, is more oriented toward these like for sale units. Otherwise, you would be like a 3-story walk up that you would likely have like surface parking around it, like you would more see in a suburban setting. And again, I think it's more about there are just different parcels that have all sorts of different characteristics where sometimes, even though you could build taller, it just might not be super practical. So like even in the Sugar House district, you could have like a lot that was 50 feet wide that would be really challenging to build like this big building and max it out. but it may work really well for like a rear loaded, 4-unit townhome with parking off of an alley or something.
Right.
That would just be our opinion.
Do you all know, or did you originate these form emails and letters that, we have one that says enter your title here, enter your business here, and they're all the same. So did you originate these and distribute them to the developers and folks, professional folks that we've received these comments from?
We did reach out to a large number. Our goal was to reach out to everyone who had done a townhome project in Salt Lake City, made them aware, and then gave them a template to share their support.
Can you explain to us what your challenges are with the condo structure? My understanding is there was a strong support for this structure because if you have these kind of attached multifamily dwellings without some kind of association regulating the care and the rules and what can be done and not done with those properties, that you end up with what can be a very inconsistent product, including things that will be zoning problems down the road, that then there's not an association in place to enforce that, and the burden then comes to the city to enforce those violations that would otherwise not be in keeping with the rules and regulations and declarations in place for a condo development, which I hear you saying that these are usually condos in stacked buildings on multiple levels. I would say that's not the case in Utah anymore. Most condo developments, many condo developments, are these townhome type, twin home type developments, and it's just that there is common area that is managed by one entity rather than leaving large areas or yards, private yards, that are managed and controlled only by the owners of those homes. So can you explain a little bit more your take on that?
Yeah. In my experience, even our single-family attached developments that we've done in Salt Lake City have still required an HOA as a city rule. So they have some slight differences in how they're worded because of how the maintenance of the exterior is handled, but it's still mandated by city ordinance that we have to have those HOAs.
It sort of depends on how those lots are split up.
Right, yeah.
If they're within the footprint of a unit or if they're like a whole yard, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and open up the public hearing on this. If there's anyone who would like to give public comment, go ahead and approach the microphone. Have we received any emails?
We have not.
We'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission.
I'm actually quite happy. No, I was just want to say, I appreciate the amendment to add those design standards for the front doors. I think that's something very important that will enhance, people walking and of course the people who own these properties. So I think it wouldn't make sense to adopt this text amendment if it didn't have that. So for that, thank you.
Okay, so I have a question. We don't have any density requirements in these specific zones. And can you bring up the map on there? Well, I like that one too, but I'd like to see the one on attachment A up on the screen, because I think I'm wondering what your take is if in these types of commercial zones that we add into some sort of density requirement for a single family attached project, because I'm wondering if, part of the consternation of this for me is that, maybe we get 3 when we could have had something a little larger, and these and we want to be promoting density, especially in areas such as this that can handle it. Is there a different way to go about this so that we do end up with a project that mirrors something that we would see anyways, that like what you had previously up there? Do you know what I'm saying? So if we have no density requirements now, is there a way to try to, if this were allowed in these commercial zones, that we ensure that we actually get some sort of density to make it worth it?
So you're proposing a minimum density, so to speak, as opposed to a maximum.
If it were a detached townhome type of project, that perhaps it has a minimum density requirement.
So by definition, apply to 3 units or more. And then in most of the other districts that we have, like a minimum lot size or, density requirements, I feel like it more inhibits density. It's like a minimum of 2,000 square feet per dwelling unit or something like that. So I'm trying to
I guess I feel like if you're making the statement that you could get a really great project, right? I guess put up the other map, sorry, and I'll reference that you just had. The one prior that was showing the density layouts. Anyway, if you are making the argument that this type of thing could then produce something very similar to a higher density thing, then I think that is what, if I were going to support something like this, I would want to see some assurance that would be the outcome. But as it stands, I don't actually support this. I think the only zone I support seeing this in is CG. I don't know that I would want to see these attached townhome type things along Redwood Road, Main Street, State Street, because I think those should really be more commercial driven. I'd like to see multifamily that actually had commercial on the bottom instead of a gym for the residents and a leasing office. But I don't think every zone that's proposed on here, I think we should have more that it doesn't really work in. But if we were going to have a positive recommendation, I would want to see some assurance that the outcome would be like what you suggest it could be, instead of something very, very low density that it shouldn't be. And I know the lot size will dictate some of that. So I'm not.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
I'm just looking, is there an alternative way to get to this that provides some better outcome, more consistent outcomes? I don't know what the answer is, but that's what I'm asking.
I think the lot size might help that. If the, like the Target parking lot, for example, like that could be a number of apartment complexes, but if they're developing a lot that's that big, then like if we put like they could do this up to a maximum lot size. So like if it would fit easily into a neighborhood, or because the lot size is small enough, but if it's a big enough lot size, then it would be mandated to, like you wouldn't be able to do this in a larger lot size.
It depends on how each of these commercial zones are written, and I don't know how they're all written. So that was just kind of my theoretical question. But as it stands now, CG is the only zone that I feel comfortable in making a positive recommendation for this type of change. The other ones, I don't think that these are the things we want to see there.
I think this work.
Just to follow up on that, I guess my question, because I think it's a really good question, are there density guidelines, minimum density guidelines for the multifamily that would be allowed to be developed there? There's not, are there?
You're saying there aren't those design standards to have the door like facing the main road. They're in some of those zones because residential's not kind of allowed in that zone.
Yeah, that's a different issue, but yeah, there's not really that character is not really common in those commercial districts, so that
Yeah.
hasn't, and the design, there's not a lot of design standards for those commercial districts except for CG most recently with the downtown building height amendments. But yeah, that's kind of the staff's opinion, is that if we're going to allow these types of dwellings, they need to have that design to have a neighborhood feel and things. To that, the other comment, I've already forgotten. I apologize.
It was just the question of whether there are minimum density standards already established for multifamily homes.
No,
which I
there's
think-
not.
I actually probably kind of like this, the recommendation from the city staff. I kind of like it.
I think the typology makes sense specifically for this. I'm thinking about State Street. I'm thinking about these business centers, and I think it just makes sense to just add this flexibility for diverse type of housing, and this typology really does make sense. It does speak to like the volume and the need that we have, and I think it opens a lot of opportunities for the city to keep growing. I think I'm ready to make a motion if this is okay. Based on the information presented in discussion, I move that the commission forward a recommendation to adopt the zoning map amendment to the city council, and this is in relationship to PLN BCM 2023-00923.
Can I make a substitute motion? Does that
Only
one need to be
after
seconded
it's
first?
seconded.
Yeah.
Then you can.
I think you may have read off of the wrong motion sheet.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, because I want a different motion.
We're on number 4.
20894. I wasn't even gonna let anyone think about seconding that one. I like this one better.
Alrighty. I have 3 tabs open. I apologize for that. This is in relationship to PLN PCM 2023-00894. Based on the information presented in discussion, I move that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to adopt the text amendment with the modifications recommended by planning staff to the City Council.
I'll second that.
We have a motion from Commissioner Santos Rivera and a second from Commissioner Burrows. Any discussion to the motion? We'll go ahead and take a vote then. Commissioner Gale,
Yes.
Commissioner Tuttle,
Yes.
Commissioner Berry,
No.
Commissioner Burrows,
Yes.
Commissioner Kratzik,
Yes.
Commissioner Santos Rivera.
Yes.
And the chair will also vote yes. That recommendation moves to the city council with a positive recommendation, 6-1. We'll go ahead and take a break. Let's take a break until 7:01. The next item on the agenda is zoning map amendment at approximately 333 West, 700 South. Case number PLN PCM 2023-00923. And our planner is Andy Holka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy Valentine's, everyone. As was mentioned, I'm here tonight to review a zoning map amendment 333 West, 700 South. So on your screen, you can see basically what you are considering tonight. You'll be making a recommendation to the City Council. The parcel's highlighted in yellow. It's currently split zoned, partially D2 downtown support, partially CG general commercial. The request is to rezone the entire parcel so it's all the same zone. There are no development plans included with this at this point. The applicant stated that their intent is just to do the rezone now to simplify the process for a future development. So everything's consistent, predictable. Here, just to orient you to the property, you can see the vicinity map. The property is at the corner of 700 South and Kilby Court, which is a private street. Got a street view image of the front of the existing building there. As I mentioned earlier, there's no plans for development immediately at this point. So considering the change from CG to D2, there are a couple differences that I wanted to highlight to the commission. This rezone, if approved, would effectively increase the maximum height by 15 feet for projects with design review, from 105 feet in the CG zone to 120 in D2. So there's a little bit of additional development potential, but with that comes additional design standards. The downtown design standards have higher percentages for things like glass, durable materials, different design standards for parking garages, and a few other things, screening, things like that, that aren't included in the CG design standards. The parking context would also change from a general context to urban center context. It's different for each land use, but generally speaking, it would be a reduction in the required parking for anything in the future. And then the land uses would change as well. CG offers a wide variety of permitted uses. Some of those will be limited with a change to D2, things like animal-related businesses, vehicle-related businesses, things that might be considered to have a little bit of a higher impact. In either zone, multifamily and mixed-use development is allowed. So looking at the city plans to see if this is consistent, basically this is part of the Granary District. City's vision is kind of a transition from warehousing and industrial uses to more residential neighborhoods. It's called out on the map as mid-rise streetcar in this area of the city. Mid-rise, this area includes both D2 and CG zoning, so either would be appropriate in this location. We've already gone through one rezone tonight, so I won't rehash all the standards of approval, but as you know, this is a recommendation to the City Council. You can recommend approval or denial or approval with modifications. Staff reviewed the request and find that it meets the standards of approval, so we recommend that you recommend approval. That's all I have for you. Any questions?
Let's go ahead and have the applicant come and present. So I guess we could say, Tag, you're it.
Jordan Atkin with TAG SLC. Appreciate you hearing us again, and specifically thank you to staff for being so accommodating and allowing us to present again. We truly don't have any development plans right now, so why bring this forward? 2023 was the slowest year we've had in the last decade in development, so we pulled a couple projects off the shelf just to keep the team busy. As stated, it's a split zone, so when we looked at the future potential of this site and compared the outcomes for CG and D2, we mostly thought that the additional design standards in D2 would be an overall benefit to the neighborhood, and that's why we chose D2 over CG. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks. Any questions? Let's go ahead and open up the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this item? Have we received any emails?
We have not.
We'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission.
All right, I'm ready for a motion then. This time I got it right. Okay, based on the information presented in decision and discussion, I move that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation to adopt this zoning map amendment to the city council.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Santos Rivera and a second from Commissioner Kratzik. Any discussion to the motion? We'll take a vote. Commissioner Tuttle.
Yes.
Commissioner Burrows.
Yes.
Commissioner Gale.
Will you
I'll come back to you.
come back to me, please?
Commissioner Barry.
Yes.
Commissioner Kratzik.
Yes.
Commissioner Santos Rivera.
Yes.
Commissioner Gale.
Yes.
And the chair will also vote yes. That motion to recommend passes to the city council unanimously.
Thank you for your time and consideration.
We'll go ahead and move on to the next item. Zoning map amendment at approximately 450 East, 700 South. Case number PLN PCM 2023-00452. And our planner is Aaron Barlow.
Just a moment. Sorry, a little slow at getting this presentation up. You know what we're going to do? PowerPoint.
While you pull that up, what is the appropriate way to raise the question of what the purpose of these recommendations are? I feel like it gives the city council either an opportunity to say, well, the planning commission recommended we approve it, or they alternatively can say, well, we don't care what they said. So what's the purpose of us doing this?
Well,
Sorry, does that sound like far too negative? I just, like, there's so much city resource on this and time, and I just think ultimately it's the city council's decision, so
well,
help me
there's a
understand.
practical purpose is that state law requires it.
Oh, well, there you go. Thank you. That's good enough. Carry on.
So I apologize. This is a more colloquial rezone and not a zoning map amendment. They're the same thing, but I'm not as formal as Andy. So this specific project is a request for a zoning map amendment at the property at approximately 450 East, 700 South, just up the street from the last one you heard, to rezone from RMF 35 moderate density multifamily residential to RMF 30 low density multifamily residential. And staff is recommending a positive recommendation. For some context, here's where the property is located. It's at the corner of 700 South and Gudgel Court, down the street from the Liberty Wells Center and the historic Second Ward building. Some shots of the site just to know what's going on the property. The property itself is a historic property. Has a preservation easement on it by Preservation Utah. The site was historically held by a historian for the Daughters Utah Pioneers. There's just more shots of the property from Gudgel Court. Some context for the neighborhood. Here's the corner of 7th and Gudgel. And Gudgel Court itself, you can see the houses are much more close together, more compact, they're smaller. So just to go over what specifically would change with this map amendment, There are some land uses that are not allowed in the RMF 30 that are allowed in RMF 35, specifically rec centers, some congregate care and residential supports of various sizes, some assisted living facilities of various sizes. The RMF 30 district does have stricter development standards with the porch design, like we looked at for the other rezone. The quality of materials, there's a higher requirement, and the amount of glass on the front of the house. There's also a reduction in the bulk of the building from 35 down to 30, but it does reduce rear and side setbacks for some uses, but actually for single family attached or detached, it is the same. And then smaller lot sizes from 5,000 to 2,000, and no minimum lot width. The proposal, staff reviewed this according to the applicable master plans, Plant Salt Lake Housing SLC and the Central Community Master Plan, and found that it supports each of those plans, and it's supported by the initiatives in those plans. One issue I really wanted to go over here is the preservation easement on the site. We've received comments from community members and people from Preservation Utah about this project and about this proposal. Staff understands the concerns that come with a property like this, but the proposed rezone would not significantly change the character of the property. It would only change the underlying rules for the property. So any changes to the site cannot happen without written consent by Preservation Utah. That includes building permits, plan developments, design reviews. The zoning is not controlled by that easement, and Preservation Utah currently holds no position on the proposal. They are working with the applicant on a proposed design, and they would be required to bring that to the board, and the board would vote on that before any sort of development would happen. Staff has been working with Preservation Utah since July 2023. Unfortunately, they had some turnover in the fall, so there kind of was a fallout with communication that happened there, but throughout this time, staff has been reaching out to Preservation Utah to make sure that we aren't stepping on their toes and that they have all their needs met. So with that, staff's recommending approval because it meets the standards and it fulfills the intent of adopted plans and policies. And the applicant has moved out of state, and he said his architect would be here. I don't know if you're not. No. Okay, so no one is here. I apologize.
Do we have any questions?
Aaron, I have a question. So, given the character of Gunchel Court, does the RMF 30 allow for the construction of those new dwellings to kind of fit within what is existing in Gunchel Court?
Yeah, the front yard setback is the average of the setback on the block. So, it adapts to 7th East, which is much broader, kind of more.
So in terms of like the side setbacks though, because we have existing homes that are really close together, would our RMF 30 facilitate some developments that, may then be consistent with that?
There is a
side
4-foot setback on one side. So on that south side, if you kind of go to, let's get back here. Right here on this south side, there could be a 4-foot setback that is, any closer you start running into fire code issues. That's probably about as close as that would be recommended at that site. And the 10-foot setback, if they really wanted to modify it, we could consider a plan development process, but for the most part, they're appropriate.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey, Aaron, can you walk me through some of these historic configurations that the applicant was thinking about?
Oh, the layout for the proposal? Or, yes. So on the site, and actually we received an email from Preservation Utah that she looked through some older Sanborn maps and found that there was actually a duplex on the vacant area along 700 East here until at least 1950. At some point that was demolished and the property was consolidated, but the applicant is proposing their rough plans that was more of a sketch to give us an idea of what that would look like, was to have a home here in similar setbacks and scale as the existing house, and then something along Gudgel Court that would, as we're talking about with Amy, that would have those similar characteristics, much more condensed and closer to the street.
Perfect, thank you.
Let's go ahead and open up the public hearing. We have 2 cards. Our first card is Cindy Cromer. State your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
So I sent something that the planner faithfully forwarded to your Dropbox late last night. It's really amazing. I'm going to stop communicating with Aaron after hours. I was struck tonight, I'm not going to repeat my comments that went to the Dropbox. I was struck tonight as I looked at your other presentations on zoning changes at how egocentric the standards are. It's as if nothing existed except Salt Lake City, that there were no other regulatory authorities. That's just the light bulb moment I had while I was listening tonight. So I'm not going to read my comment that went at your Dropbox, but as I indicated, I view this requested rezoning as an initial step in either redevelopment of or resale of this property. Otherwise, the owner would wait for the RMF 35 modifications, which are likely to be even more generous. All parties recognize the easement held by Preservation Utah since 1993. You can think of the legal authorities as similar to the regulation of base zoning and overlay zoning, often in conflict in Central City, or perhaps like 2 different governments attempting to regulate the same area. I can think of North Point. In this case, the resources of Salt Lake City dwarf those of Preservation Utah, but Salt Lake City's authority does not diminish the contract that Preservation Utah is obligated to address. I have written to you about Salt Lake's failure to recognize the easement on my own property. 50% of the time, the permit counter acts as if there's no easement at all in place. And that experience leads me to ask you to recommend a development agreement to the City Council, which would recognize the legal responsibility of Preservation Utah regarding this property. Again, that's because of my experience with the permitting counter ignoring the easement on my own property. Thanks.
Thank you. The other card we have is Gregory Roth. State your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Gregory Roth. I have lived on Gudgel Court well, you can see it, 718 right there, for about 6 years. I'm very happy there, and I am largely in support of this proposal. I think that it's a good way of adding some additional density, filling in the missing middle, and it is largely in keeping with the neighborhood. There is one thing that I do object to, and I did want to bring out, and that is the posters that were set up and the way that they described what this was. And I will read the relevant sentence. It says, "The stated intent of this proposal is to enable development of the site in its historic configuration." Now, reading that, you might think that all they wanted to do was to add some shutters that had been there originally and were not. I completely understand why they might be a little nervous about getting public comment. I am in support of this. The immediate neighbor is in support of this. But I feel like that was, at best, an inadequate description of what the proposal actually is, and at worst, deliberately deceptive. In response to some of the questions that came up, if anyone is interested in seeing the Sanborn maps, I happen to have them. The main way in which what the proposal differs from what was there historically, and you can see that on page 12 of the staff report, is that indeed there was a duplex just to the east of the property as it is now. It was significantly closer to the street. It was made of brick, but broad strokes, it looks about the same as what's proposed. What there was not and has not historically been is the additional house that would have been south of that. I think that's pretty much all I had to say. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Oh, I will just say one more thing. I don't know what's to be done about this, if there is something to be done about the nature of the sign and how it was described. I leave that entirely to you. I thought that it was worth bringing up. There is one more other thing, and that the statement was that this would support home ownership. The fact that the owner is out of state, and in conversations that I've had with him, it doesn't sound like the intent is home ownership so much as rental property.
Thank you.
That's relevant to you.
Did you want to leave those papers, or you? I mean, whatever you want to do. If you want it in the public record, then we can keep a hold of them.
Sure. Let's see. So one of these is from 1950, and the other one is from 1911. There is the duplex. You can see it right there. And there is the corresponding. This one's 1911.
Great. Yeah, that'll be in the public record. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to give public comment? I think we've run out of people. Have we received any emails?
Yeah, we've received one. Dear Aaron, assuming Preservation Utah approves the development of Mr. Sell's property, the Central City Neighborhood Council would like to express their support for the potential rezone. We encourage this rezone because the additional homes would add much needed family-size housing to the neighborhood. We would encourage Mr. Sell to sell the homes rather than rent, because the neighborhood could also use more for sale housing. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this project, and that was from Rihanna Riggs, the chair of the Central City Neighborhood Council.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission.
I wonder if something can be done to, because I also read Preservation Utah's letter to us, if something can be done to improve that process so that they definitely for sure get notice and are part of the
Yeah, well,
conversation.
I actually responded to her, and we started a productive conversation to reassure them and get this kind of process, get a better grasp on it. And I told her, like, if she runs into any issues with properties in Salt Lake City, to call me, and we'll make that work. And
Great. You're a superhero.
So I remember our conversations in rezoning the RMF 30 to this, and one of the stated intents was to preserve existing housing stock by allowing some extra flexibility to these types of things. So in this sense, I mean, too often we see a zone that isn't performing the way that it was intended, but this was part of the intent. And I'm pleased that it doesn't preclude the house that may be built on Gudgel, since we don't have an actual plan, that it can be consistent with what's there, which is what I think we would like to see. And I'm pretty sure Preservation Utah will also promote that as well. So I feel really comfortable with this, and this is a recommendation to the city council. So perhaps when you do the next noticing, you change your wording.
I will change the wording.
I don't, that's up to you, but we have another opportunity because the city council is the one who actually decides this. We make a recommendation. So your neighbors have other opportunities to get involved in. That would just be my recommendation. But I'm really pleased that we're seeing the preservation of the existing home, which is what we hoped we would do in RMF 30s. If there's no other discussion, I'll make a motion. I'm on a roll tonight. Based on the information presented and the discussion, I move that the commission recommend that the city council approve this zoning map amendment.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Berry and a second from Commissioner Gale. Any discussion to the motion? Let's vote. Commissioner Gale.
Yes.
Commissioner Tuttle.
Yes.
Commissioner Berry.
Yes.
Commissioner Burrows.
Yes.
Commissioner Kratzik.
Yes.
Commissioner Santos Rivera.
Yes.
And the chair also votes yes. That passes unanimously Well, passes with a unanimous recommendation to the City Council. And since we have run out of items on the agenda, we will go ahead and adjourn. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone.